Okay, here's what we're going to do now. This is a little different. This is not going to be the analysis thing like we've been doing in the past. We're going to talk about how to read a lead sheet um, in a way that I hope is useful to you. So we're looking at a lead sheet now for Billie Jean by Michael Jackson. There's notes here, and you're thinking, this is nonsense. I can't read these notes. Maybe you don't know how to read the dots on the lines and all that stuff, but that's fine. I don't care about that. We're still going to be able to dial in the song in our sequencer just by using a couple tricks, 2 tricks actually, that we already know how to do. So we can read this thing. We can make music out of this piece of paper based off what we already know how to do. So let's do it. The first thing I'm going to look at is, just like the other tunes, I need to figure out what key it's in. So there's a clue when you look at sheet music, and it's right here. It's this thing right there. Now, you might say, okay, there's a sharp symbol. We know that that is the symbol for a sharp. It's one of these things, or hashtag, if you will. Don't call it a hashtag. Call it a sharp, because we're talking about music, not Twitter. So this is a sharp, and there's one of them right there. Sometimes you'll see more of them. You might see 3, 4 of them here, and you might see flats here. I don't really care where they are, what notes they're on, doesn't really matter. All I need to do is count how many there are. There are 1, okay? Or there is 1. There are 1? There is 1? I don't know, doesn't matter. 1 sharp here. So let's go to our circle of fifths. We know this thing. And what will this tell us about that 1 sharp? It's actually going to tell us what key we're in. Because if there was nothing there, if there was nothing in that spot, we would be in the key of C. If we go this way, we get sharps. And if we go this way, we get flats. So if there's 1 sharp, we would be here. If there's here, or here, one of these two. If there were 2 sharps, we would be here. 3 sharps, we would be here, and so on. If there was 1 flat there, we would be here or here. Sorry. If there were 2 flats, we would be here. 3 flats, we would be here. So there is 1 sharp, which means we must be here. So I'm either in the key of G or the key of E minor. That's just what that symbol is telling me. So let's figure it out. How do we know if we're in the key of G or E minor? Well, a really good clue would be if our first chord was one of those 2 things. And our first chord is an E minor. So pretty darn safe bet that we're in the key of E minor. So let's assume we're in the key of E minor. And hey, that's the key we've just been in for like the last 2 or 3 videos. So that's convenient because it's fresh in our head. So we're in the key of E minor. Now it's telling us the names of the chords. These guys. E minor, F sharp minor over E. Now this over E thing we haven't looked at yet, but we will. It's an easy one. So we're going to look at that over E. So let's just ignore it for just a second and we'll come back to it. So our 2 chords are E minor and F sharp minor. We're in the key of E minor. So our first chord is going to be an E minor chord. And we know E minor in the key of E minor is just a chord based on E. So let's put that together. I'm going to do it right here. So our E minor is going to be our 1st, 3rd, and 5th. There's our E minor chord. Great. So there's our first chord. An E minor in the key of E minor is a 1 chord. We know how to do that. Our next chord is an F sharp, and we're going to forget about that over E for just a minute. We'll do that next. So an F sharp is based on 2, but we have a little bit of a problem here. So let's build our F sharp chord. So root, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Now what is the 2 chord, the 2nd chord in a minor key? Is it major, minor, or the funky one, the diminished? It's diminished. So this doesn't want an F sharp minor chord, an F sharp diminished chord. It wants an F sharp minor chord. And we can see by looking at the the notes here, we don't need to know how to read these notes, but we see there's another sharp here, which means there's one note that's out of key that they want us to fix. That's what they're telling us with that. So we need to convert our diminished chord to a minor chord. And in order to do that, all we really need to do is raise this note. So to get a diminished chord to a minor chord, we're going to raise the fifth of the chord. So that's just something you might want to remember or deal with when you encounter it. So now we have an F sharp minor chord and an E minor chord. Okay, so E minor chord, F sharp minor chord. Now let's deal with this over E. All that over E means is, if another way to write this that would make it look a little more clearer is if we wrote it kind of stacked, which sometimes you see them written this way. So F sharp minor over E. It looks like a fraction, right? It's not a fraction. It's literally the way I just said it. F sharp minor over E. All that means is they want an F sharp minor chord, but they want an E in the bottom of it. So they want an E in the bass. They're just telling us what the bass line is by saying that. So it doesn't affect the chord at all. It's still an F sharp minor chord, but we're going to add an E to the bottom of it. Sometimes those notes in the bottom will be notes that are in the chord, and sometimes they won't be in the chord. This note is not in the chord, but that's fine. So here's our F sharp minor chord, and they want us to put an E in the bottom of it. So that changes the quality of the chord a little bit, but not much. And they wrote the music, and that's what they want us to do. That's what they've told us to do based on the names of those chords. So that's what we're going to do. Okay, so there's our first bar. I'm going to put this into rhythm a little bit here. Let me see here. Oops, I'm going awfully fast. That should be about there. I'm trying to remember how this song goes and just kind of roughly dial in the rhythm. Okay. Oh, I'm going to get rid of my scale. I left the scale here of E minor, but it's going to trip up my rhythm. And I want this to really sound like the song, so I want to start it on beat 1. Okay. Okay. So now let's do the next bar. The next bar is slightly different. That would be here. So E minor, now they want a 7th, and then the same F sharp minor. So remember that whenever we have these 7ths, if I just played an E minor and didn't put the 7th on it, I would be playing 0 wrong notes, right? I would just not be playing all of the notes that it's asking me to do. So if I leave off the 7th and just do an E minor, I have all the right notes. There's just one more note that I could put in there. So leaving it off doesn't create any wrong notes. It just doesn't have enough notes. So we could leave that off, but we're going to put it in. So let's go to the first thing because it's so similar. I'm going to copy that and paste it here. So E minor, but now they want a 7th. So there's the 7th of E minor. And then that F sharp over E is the same. Okay, and then that's what they want for pretty much all the rest of this section. So this bar is the same as the first bar, E minor to F sharp minor over E. And then this one is E minor 7 with F sharp minor over E. Same as that one. So that's the pattern going back and forth. And I don't want to analyze this entire song. So I'm just going to take these 2 bars and let's just repeat them 4 times. And I've queued up, let's get this over here somewhere. There we go. I've queued up a little beat that will kind of sound like it a little bit, just kind of roughly. Okay, so now we have the beginnings of Billie Jean that we figured out just based off the sheet music when we didn't really know how to read notes at all and we didn't have to deal with the notes. All we had to do was figure out the key and look at the names of the chords and then figure out how to make those chords, which we know how to do. We don't even need to deal with individual notes. We just need to recognize those chord symbols and be able to put it together. Excellent. You can read sheet music now.